Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area. I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening and watching.
Great to be here as well. So, Trishul has achieved FIRE, the financial independence, retire early. Trishul also now has a young daughter. And today I want to talk about parents who have achieved FIRE and especially address the question like, how do you teach your kids the value of hard work? And it's kind of, I have had a few client conversations recently where they have achieved FIRE. They wasn't a FIRE challenge, but they're now financially independent and they still have kids in school. And one of the parts of the conversation is, are you going to keep working? Are you going to stop working? Or are you going to keep working because it's now optional for you? You are financially independent. You could retire early. And the general consensus, again, small sample size, is that they're probably going to keep working while kids are still in school. Then once kids are off to college, they'll probably stop working at that point, which gives a lot of creative financial planning choices where maybe we don't need to save into their 401k. Maybe they do because we want to kind of manage their expenses well, or they can increase their lifestyle expenses. They go on a little more expensive vacations. Other things might change as their kids get older. But I really want to kind of discuss this idea, kind of part of a series, like the difference between financial independence and retirement. Like, just because you've achieved FIRE, Trishul, you're still working now. You're not, you retired and you unretired. And this idea of financial independence versus retirement and the different factors that go into some of these lifestyle decisions. I want to get to this over a few conversations, but today I really want to focus on if you're financially independent and you have kids in the house and or going to school, what are some of the parenting values that you think about that you want to make sure and instill on them? And the easy one, because this came up in a client conversation, how do you show your kids that you work hard and this is an important value to have? If you stop working, like, no, trust me, I worked really hard before you were born. And now I'm living a life of leisure. But the hard work's really important. You just never saw me work hard.
Right.
So first I want to kind of ask you, like, have you ever thought about that? That, like, from a parenting perspective, if you stopped working, or how do you think about how you show your kids the value of hard work? That's the first kind of parenting question.
Right. Well, I think let's set the stage a little bit in terms of where we are right now. I think, just beginning with FIRE, financial independence, retire early, I like to ask clients or prospects or just individuals who are curious about the topic, what does financial independence mean to you? Because obviously it can mean many different things. There's many different flavors and there's many different assumptions that may be driving that understanding. And, for me, it's really much more about the financial independence part rather than the retire early part.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically what financial independence means is essentially employment or work for money is more optional, meaning it's not necessarily there because you need to survive or support your standard of living.
Mm-hmm.
It's more there because you enjoy it or it's a part of your life that you want to keep going for various other reasons, but not really because if you don't do it, you'll be on the street, or you won't be able to meet very important life goals, even if they are beyond survival.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of push you here where we've had many conversations in the past. We'll have it again in the future. This is not a financial independence, the work optional side of it. This is not a how you are spending your time.
Yeah.
I'm really curious as a parent. So I guess like what are some of the values you think are important to teach your children, and how do you specifically make sure to teach them those values?
Right.
And I guess I picked hard work, but like I'll let you start even broader if you want. What's a specific value you have thought about? I want to teach my children this, and how do you do that?
Yeah, and we can start with hard work, right? It's a good value to understand, and often, yes, it can come with the notion of, okay, mommy and daddy are going to their place of employment, and they have to disappear for 6 to 8 hours every day while I'm, at school, and and I get to see them on the weekends more, and stuff like that, right? That can be one vision of hard work in their mind, right? Or working late evenings, or working on other types of employment related projects during off business hours, things like that.
I don't think he thinks that. I think that there's this again, this is like trying to get into like child psychology. It was not my intention, but like they go to school, and they have things they need to work on that challenge them, and I think they project that feeling of observation. Like they think parents kind of go to grown-up school. Like there's things that the parents do that challenge them, that like and they're growing and learning, kind of like they can see a little bit of their own growth. Like I couldn't do this last year, I can do this now, and they have an idea that they grew a little bit, and they know the parents aren't physically growing, but like, oh, they must be doing the grown-up version of that. So I don't think they don't have to see you like working on weekends.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say if when this understanding comes into play, the understanding that we're doing this, or adults are doing this to put food on the table, right? It has a purpose beyond just becoming better at things, right? It has this, again, basic needs component and survival component, and then everything else being able to do component, right? So I think part of the distinction is, where does the type of satisfaction that people enjoy come from? And it does seem to come from the striving for things that are difficult. And often that is probably the key goal that we want to instill, or that I look towards instilling. And I think it's still there, although it's decoupled from that component of, it's also here to put food on the table, or to provide for the things that we like. At least because so far, most of the conversations have been, are at my daughter's level, where she's like 7 years old now. So she doesn't necessarily have that broader connection of, okay, we also need the financial resources that come with the hard work.
Okay, so maybe it's just like hobbies could be a specific example where it's is not a do what I say, not what I do kind of situation, but like they see you taking on challenges either with them or in front of them that like aren't work related, but they do see you kind of taking these things on.
And in my mind, even though I'm not necessarily spending most of my time working for a paycheck, I am doing work that I enjoy, that is hard a good amount of the time. And a lot of it is because it provides me with satisfaction. And I think my daughter does see it. I'll just lay out a few things. Like, for example, often when we're if she's off from school, or if it's an evening or something, I do my daily exercise with her, and we both try to do it together. and it's hard. It's not. It's
Yeah.
probably the hardest part of my day, even though I don't get paid for it with any sort of remuneration, except for maybe life points, which, from one perspective are pretty important. But yes, it's a struggle. It's something where if you're not, from the perspective where I'm trying to get better at it, I'm trying to build muscle, I'm trying to be more fit, you actually have to push yourself to the point
Yeah.
where it hurts. That's how you actually gain from the exercise of doing it. So she sees the struggle. She knows that it's not easy, but I still do it, right? And I think that's important for her to understand. I think
Okay.
there are other things within our life. For example, when we're doing chores, it's just part of what we do, meaning, oh, yeah, let's play, but let's make sure we get the chores done first. Let's do it together.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What am I going to do? Let's both do this thing that isn't entirely pleasant, but once we're done with it, then we can do something more enjoyable. And since it isn't that pleasant, let's make it more pleasant. Let's make it a game. Let's see who can
Yeah.
finish first. Let's put music on, things like that.
Okay. So some things that come to mind for me are just like working in the backyard. I don't want to say I'm great at gardening, but usually in the springs we do tend to like that. For me, it's a lot of sports. That's where, whether I'm coaching them or I'm trying to get better at some things. The last kind of year and a half, I've been playing a lot of pickleball, so I've been taking my daughter out to play pickleball a few times. They see me ski and snowboard in the winter. They have watched me play softball. So they know that sometimes at their practices that I'm coaching, I will also participate because I'm, again, also trying to get better. Working in the backyard, I'm not good at that at all, but they do see that you have to put in the time, you have to go out, and you don't know if something's going to grow. You don't know if this thing's going to work out, and it might take years to find out. But you're still going to try and put in the effort. So I think that putting in the effort with unknown results, I think is one of the kind of the things I think about of, I want to say taking pride, but close to we're taking pride in the effort, in the hard work itself, not only getting happiness or displeasure based on the result. So that the process of results kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it does sound like there are very, I don't say easy, but it's very, very achievable to teach that value that's not associated with your career.
Yeah.
Whether you are working or not. So if you had no job, you had no career, you decided not to build a financial advisory practice, you are playing video games in your fire state, but when your daughter's home, then you make sure to do all the same things. Theoretically, you are teaching them that same value, but it sounds like there's actually a correlation between, if you're enjoying life, if you're enjoying fire, you probably should be doing some things that continue to challenge you and continue to grow. And it's like if you're living life well, you're already displaying that value for your children. But if you're living a sedentary life, you're already not displaying that value of hard work. So it's kind of the things that led you to get to fire, you're going to keep. It'll be different tasks, but still the same values that your children will see as they grow up.
I think so. I think there are many things beyond just the employment notion that they can see that from. I mentioned the exercise, I mentioned the chores, but literally it can be with everything. The notion I like to instill in her many times, this kid on a playground when she was oh boy, she probably wasn't even 2 years old, maybe a year and a half old, and she was trying to climb up one of the harder jungle gym type of things, and another kid started to help her, and then the other kid said something interesting. He said, "Practice makes better," right?
Okay.
And it just kind of occurred to me, wait, isn't the saying practice makes perfect, right? And And then it's just something clicked. I'm like, wait, but this kid's right, right? The goal
Yeah.
isn't to reach this ultimate notion of perfection and then you don't have to do anything anymore, right?
Yeah.
Everything's all great and rosy and dandy, and you've attained enlightenment and the world peace and all that. No, the goal is to just constantly try to figure out what can you do better and how can you iterate and make a small adjustment to be better the next time.
Because my daughters have heard me say to all the teams I've ever coached, if I ask how do you get better at something, they know the answer is practice.
Exactly.
Where
right?
and it doesn't matter what the thing is. It's not just sports. If you want to get better at the crossword, do the crossword. I remember during COVID, I've never been able to juggle. And I'm like, you know what? I want to see if I can figure this out. I want to be outside in the backyard. So I kind of slowly learned how to juggle. And I can juggle okay now. Not good by any means, but they saw me like be bad to,
Right.
oh, you got 3 in a row. Cool. And then like slowly build that up.
There you go.
And so, yeah, that like teaching the benefits of practice, I totally agree. And you don't need to be financially independent. So that's like another thing. Like you don't need to be financially independent to teach them the same values. It doesn't have to come from work. But even if you are financially independent, making sure for your own benefit that you have these challenges, that you are growing and moving forward in whatever you want. Like, does not have to be career, but still not staying flat. You get to choose what challenges you take on, but you're still growing in some area, even if it's not career. And then your children will see those kind of behaviors displayed.
Yeah. I think the overarching notion is you want to instill a growth mindset in just anything, right? And even mention like me hauling away and do video games, but no, do the video games with the kid, right? And show that it's another example. Literally everything can fall into that. And why shouldn't it? So, there's this notion of there's this understanding that when people retire, right, they just go on constant vacations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in fact, studies show that when people actually leave employment at an elder age, if they don't have something else, it's actually a pretty big predictor of mortality, meaning atrophy from there. If you really don't continue that growth mindset into retirement, right? Which is why I say it's more about the independence than the retirement. It's really about having the options to do things that aren't financially motivated and doing those things.
Yeah. So if it's not, I still want to kind of think about this idea of parents who are financially independent, but especially the kids are still in school. As I come up with a few other things, like, are there any other challenges you have observed of, again, parenting while financially independent that it's like almost create artificial constraints? Maybe like that's another thing I've seen. Like, but what some of the other observations you have as a financially independent person with a parent as a parent with a child still in school age?
Well, so on the good side, there's a lot of flexibility, right? We have plenty of time to spend on evenings, make sure we have quality time every single day, and things like that don't end up being an issue. At the same time, it also affords the opportunity to be a little lax on certain things. Like, for example, I remember, what was it that broke? There was something where I don't know, maybe I think my daughter left like the refrigerator door open or something like that.
Okay.
And I was like, you got to close it. You can't just leave it open, right? If you grab something, otherwise it can spoil and break. And then she's like, oh, but you can just get a new one on Amazon. Oh. That's not how that works. Wait, what? And of course, because many times when a toy of hers is broken or something, it's been so easy to magically replace things, right? Because almost everything is expendable at this point, and the cost of these consumer products are at a point where, okay, you just click reorder and you get a new one shows up on Amazon. So yeah, instilling the notion that no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So, a few things came up with respect to that, and building up this core competency of finance, it's something that you have to think about it from an age appropriate standpoint, right? And sort of build up the competencies over time. There's different skill sets you want to think about when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think earlier on, it was just trying to provide the understanding everything isn't expendable. Some of these things are infinite resources. And it really had me thinking, though, like, for example, maybe 200 years ago, running water was not an infinite resource, meaning you had to really conserve to make sure that was okay, or you didn't have an infinite amount of clothes just all over. Like what did they say? Like, if you look at the amount of clothes in the average, the amount of retail outlets in the US, it can enclose the entire planet multiple times over, and these are just unsold clothes that are laying there, right?
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
I had never thought about that, but I can see that.
There's an abundance of all these things that literally, if you had just one of them 200 years ago, you'd be the king of that particular village, right?
I remember, I think I saw a photograph from the late 1800s, and it was just like, I don't know, the apartment, but it was like a house where people lived. They didn't have closets.
Yeah.
Houses did not have closets because you didn't have stuff to put in a closet.
Right.
Some of the wealthier had a like a wardrobe,
A bureau,
which was a bureau, like, and so like there's a kind of a closet out, but it's part of your furniture.
Yeah.
And so like if you look at pictures of housing before 1900, closets didn't really exist.
Right.
And so like we're definitely at a abundance of stuff where every room needs a closet, and a nice master bedroom has 2 closets.
So I think the notion is you kind of, or what I kind of lean towards is I kind of need to instill some notion of artificial scarcity, right?
Yeah.
Because it can't just be an understanding that everything is expendable and there's an infinite amount of resources and things like that. I remember one of the earlier videos I showed her is, here's what happens to your garbage, right? You can find kid videos about basically anything, but when you throw that away, here's where it's going, right? And if it's not handled properly, it can lead to pollution and things like that. So, building up that understanding of some things are finite, some things, are scarce.
Okay. I'm going to get to again, this is a great parenting conversation because I have a hard question in a second. First, like, I have intentionally taught my kids, like, when you fall down, you got to get back up again.
Yeah.
And like literally when they were on their bike and they fell down, I would not help them get up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you've got to like figure out how to, cause I can tell there's nothing broken. I can tell, like, I'm going to make sure. And one time on snowboarding, my daughter broke her wrist. Like, okay, that's a different scenario. We're going to take care of that. But yeah, like, you got to like untangle your legs and figure out how to get up on the bike and then stand your bike back up again and get back on it. And that was so painful for both them and me to go through that. But now, if they're off riding by themselves and I'm not there, I trust if they fall down, they'll go back up and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think that artificial scarcity, like, the way to really teach the lesson is when one of those favorite toys breaks.
Yeah.
You don't fix it or replace it.
Yeah.
And that is so hard, both as a parent and to them. But like that's almost like I feel it's like almost like problem society. But like, I have seen too many parents like, oh no, I can fix that problem.
Yeah.
And you're not teaching the lesson, because now everything is fixable or replaceable. And
Yeah.
there have been times where if it's a stuffed animal, I will sew it back together if I can. But other times, like, no, that blanket is too shredded. It's just it's threadbare. Like, it's the definition of threadbare.
Yeah.
There's not enough like material for me to sew one side to the other.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That is, I think that's like, it's probably coming back to like those lessons of like, which would you rather do, the hardest workout you've ever done, or tell your daughter she has to throw away her favorite toy because it's irreplaceable.
I think it comes down to this core principle that I think it has resonated throughout our upbringing for my daughter. It's actually a principle that comes from the Montessori understanding. It's so my daughter's gone to Montessori type of schools since 4 or 5 years. It's, she's been able to. And the key thing that they try to instill out of, all qualities is this notion of independence. The idea that what we really want for our kids is for them to be functioning adults, right? We want them to be able to go out in the world and be able to deal and to figure out what's best for themselves without needing a constant input and guide, right? How do they manage their own emotions and their own temperament and their own desires and their own likes and their own addictions and their own whatever, right? So, one of the key phrases from the founder of Montessori, Maria Montessori, is, I'm going to butcher this, so we'll probably put it in the show notes, but I think it goes something like, do not do for a child that which they can do for themselves, right?
Okay.
If it's something within their capacity to deal with, let them deal with it, right? And the way you let them deal with it is by letting them deal with it, frankly, right? So, when the Montessori method is working, when the adults or the guides disappear into the background and the kids are learning on their own, right? That's when they're actually in the zone, where they're actually putting things together in their mind and physically, right?
Yeah.
Making connection.
I think the biggest example I think of, it happens so often, is like, you're trying to get out the door.
Yeah.
They need to tie their shoes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I will tie their shoes and we'll be on time.
Yeah.
Or they will tie their shoes and we're going to be late.
Yeah. And they got to see the consequence of being late, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, now we're late. We missed the whatever. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, maybe next time you could do something different. That's how it goes. So, there have been times where if we don't do this, we don't get to do something very important, like, go to that science center or go to the beach or whatever. And it didn't happen, right? So, it probably the most important lessons happened that way than, just doing the right things and achieving, what you hope to achieve, rather making the mistakes, right? Failing again and again and again and again are probably the most important things you can do as a kid.
Yeah. Any other observations before I get to some of the corollary conversation I wanted to bring up? Like anything that you've noticed, because that having achieved FIRE, being financially dependent, you are also a parent that you've had to intentionally teach something, as opposed to it's just opportunities came up.
Yeah. So again, there's probably been more with the financial literacy side of things. And again, it has to be kind of age appropriate. So there's some insights that we've kind of pulled in. We've given this notion of, okay, she has this money, it comes in for gifts and stuff like that. And we've actually told her, there's a lot here. We can save it for the future. What we're going to do is help invest it for you. And we actually show her, here's the account, here's the chart where it's going up. And then she now gets the notion of, hey, it's going to be more money by delaying that gratification down the road. And her almost instinctual notion now is if she gets money, she's like, okay, let's put it in the bank. And then I actually take her, she gets to put the money in the ATM, right? So she gets that feedback of putting the money in and it's showing up on her account online. So I think that helps solidify the notion of it's going somewhere and it's going for your future benefit, right? It's growing over time, this notion of investing. I think for the actual, the spending money and the allowance and the things like that, I did hear this anecdote, which we haven't quite put into work yet because it may be a year or two out before it's age appropriate. But there's this notion of, the base case of allowance is you get $20 a month, right? Or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
I don't know what the inflation adjusted amount is. What kids expect. Whatever happens to be, you get this monthly amount. But I heard this other financial independent individual state that he did something else with his children that seemed to work over time. And the idea is, instead of having a fixed amount that they automatically get, instead they have certain chores they need to do just to be a responsible member of the household, and they don't get paid for that. Meaning you just do these things because that's what is expected of you. We're in we're in a family. We're working together to support this household. Here are my expectations. Here are your expectations. We just do it. However, if you want to earn some money, you can find a problem and help fix it. You can find something wrong and you can make it better. You can find an issue and you can deal with it, right? And what he said, so what he said is that encouraged his kids to be more entrepreneurial. Like, hey, I saw this, the floorboard is getting banged up. What, can I paint it for you, Dad? Right? And the kid starts doing things like that. Or, it creates this motive or this intention to be more entrepreneurial, to look for problems and try to solve them. And again, this is more beyond just, oh, I'm getting an income. It's thinking more like a business person, right? Being more like an entrepreneur.
That's interesting. So I know I have not. It's a lot of my money lessons with kids tend to be more academic, but cause they know that when they ask a question, I will take the time to give them an honest, thorough answer. And if they're too young, I'll say like, "That's a great question. I'm not going to answer it this time. I will answer that for them in the future." Something along those lines. I have told them things like, we're gonna go to food trucks tonight, and food trucks in the Bay Area can get kind of expensive. My oldest two have an Apple Watch that they can use to pay, but I don't want them to have to use their money to buy food. Like, I'm their parent. Like, I will provide the food, so I will transfer the money to them so that they can pay for it themselves. But allows us, I can go to one food truck and they can go to their own food truck. They can make their own decisions and the capacity to pay. There have also been times where they want like a new sports equipment kind of thing, a new softball bat, or one of my daughters wanted a catcher's mitt. It's like, okay, I'm not opposed to buying you a new glove or a new mitt or bat, but you need to convince me that you're actually going to get the use out of it. You're going to put the work in to make this thing worth the cost, kind of thing. And I think that's one of the big things that has come up a lot is sometimes like they could use a new thing, but I don't trust their effort level in that particular thing. So no, you're gonna stick with the old cheap bad one. And like we're gonna go until literally it falls apart. But if there's something that they are putting in the effort to get better at, then I don't mind spending the money on a new softball bat. Like that's an example of like conversations I've had about the restraint isn't the cost of the item. The restraint is they have to convince me that they're actually putting in the effort.
I think that having those accountability frameworks, right? Empowers them, in the longer term. I think an analogous example is I bring my daughter grocery shopping, right? And lately she's come up with the notion of, she can pick out things she wants. And I might say yes if it looks healthy and stuff like that. And to her surprise, I said yes to the shredded wheat, which was coated
Okay.
with strawberry
Frost.
frosting.
Yeah.
And I said yes because I know it doesn't taste as good as she thinks it does, but it
Oh,
does have strawberry frosting, which is why she, picked it. But I
yeah.
said, just like other things, if you get it, you got to finish it. Meaning, we're not getting something else
Okay.
until it's done, right? So she got obviously she got it. She took one bite. She's like, no, not for me. I'm like, well, what are you gonna do now? Like, we have
Yeah.
this whole box. She's like, okay, well, I'll just have one every time we have cereal, and then we'll
So
work
I
through
actually love frosted shredded wheat. So that's I feel like it's not a lesson of not necessarily like she has to finish, but like there's a lesson in taste somewhere in there. It's like okay. I think this I don't want to question it, but like, are you teaching her not to try new things?
Well, so two things. We know kind of with taste, and you may have even heard this or experienced this with your kid. Often, what they say with a new flavor is they have to taste it 10 times before it becomes something that they might like. And that's
Okay.
usually because no matter what it is, unless it's very sweet, and then it's a little too easy to adapt to it. But for most things, if it's a different flavor, whatever it happens to be, the brain just says no immediately that first time. And if they never
Okay.
try it again, they won't try it the second time. But if they do, that no drops down, and it takes about 10 actually to introduce a new item, right?
I'll
So
just keep that in mind because my older daughter, she does a great job of trying new foods.
yeah.
The younger two are frustrating to try to find restaurants especially when we travel.
So I don't know if this will work, but a little life hack that I did for this 10 time notion is wait till they're really, really hungry and then try
Oh,
that one item, right? And if you do that 10 separate times, you'll usually get adoption, unless it's
okay.
something they just don't like, right? But we've seemed to have
Yeah.
success with that with her, although she hasn't really been a particularly picky eater, in general. Maybe
Okay.
because of that, or maybe just because of other reasons. But to your point, it's not a concern, so that's why this is one area
Yeah.
where we've been able to push her on and still get her to commit. But and at the end of the day, the back and forth is okay. So I ask her, what's the compromise here? That's going to take forever. She's like, okay, I'll do 1 this time, 2 the next time, 3 the next time, and I'll go up from there. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
that at least gets us, somewhere sensible, over the course of the
Yeah.
next 6 months. So, it was a back and forth, but it was something where she still had to be accountable to that decision that she made. And then
Yeah.
also in the intervening time, she wasn't allowed to pick another cereal, right? Until that one
Yeah.
was finished.
Okay. So the last kind of corollary conversation I want to get to. Another client of mine, they are close to financial independence. They have kids in school. They were close enough that one of the spouses stopped working. That's like actually one of the things I pushed her towards. And the other one, we've had these conversations. I may kind of mention a little bit at the top, but if he's likely working until the kids are out of school, we can start to plan in. He actually doesn't need to be financially independent to do all these things.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
kids are now at an age where they can travel internationally a little bit easier. And this is the example, like maybe he doesn't need to save in his 401k. But he's not. They are not actually financially independent right now. The husband is working, the wife is not, but the household is not financially independent yet. And still, they almost get to live the lifestyle as if they were.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. So it's that. This is why I kind of have a little bit of umbrage about the financial independent being work optional kind of thing, because I think if you design your life well, this is where life planning comes into play. you could still have the same lifestyle as if you were financially independent. We're accounting for like your income pays your bills and just letting your investments grow for another 8 to 10 years. That's kind of like the super basic scenario in this particular case. But this is why I like the idea of separating financial independence from kind of retirement or the work that you do, where if you are very intentional with the life you're living, where even in your example, you're financially independent and you still decided to work, even though it's completely optional. You still have a financial advisory business and you're still trying to help people, and you don't do it on a pro bono basis. You actually charge them to kind of make it worth your time, sort of. But it's like there's a variety of other reasons where you are working still. You were not retired, even though you achieved FIRE. And so the age of kids, I found in conversations with clients, gives them it goes back to that artificial constraint kind of thing. Like, we can't afford it, like we can, but we have to tell, like, here's why we don't just spend superfluously. The age of the kids creates this artificial deadline. Like, there's no particular reason why they would stop working 8 years from now, 10 years from now, or 12 years from now. Like, those from here to that time frame, those are kind of all more or less the same. Like, they'll get to financial independence before then anyways. But let's see, I have an 8-year-old who will turn 18 in 10 years and be off to college. Like, makes it easy to work 10 years instead of 8. And they can change their mind. They can stop working sooner or work a little longer depending on their lifestyle. But it almost creates this easy to envision, I don't need to get to financial independence as soon as possible. I'm likely going to be working anyways. Let's take advantage of that and be intentional with our life now.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, kind of you did FIRE first, then parents, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were in the same year.
Okay.
Strongly correlated.
Okay. If your daughter was born 2 years earlier, or if you had kind of gotten to financial independence like 2 years later, do you think that might have changed some of your decisions?
It's hard to say. You know, the narrative or the backstory is essentially, I sat down with my wife the week my daughter was born and said, "Hey,
Okay.
Here's where we are." And you know, it's one of those things that the conversation could have happened earlier, but it probably happened as soon as it could have, and it was good timing.
So I think it's an important observation. This is something that comes up with the work I do with clients who are parents.
Yeah.
Where it all matters kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we want you to be saving for financial independence. What are the parenting values you want to teach your kids? What are the ages? What are you going to do with them? It's harder, but not impossible to travel internationally while they're still in diapers. Like, is that a priority for you? What is a priority? Is it visiting grandparents more of a priority? Where are you going to live? House that you buy?
Yeah.
This all matters. But I think one of the big things that I try to stress is you don't need to get to financial independence as soon as possible to do all the stuff. And I have similar conversations with either clients whose children are already grown, so they're older, kids are out of the house, or clients who don't have children. I don't like the idea of waiting until you're financially independent and then doing the stuff. I don't want you to wait until something to be happy. Like, what is the lifestyle you want now? You are a parent. You are not financially independent. But that does not mean that you have to wait. to be financially dependent to do the things.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think just stepping back a bit, there are many flavors of financial independence, to begin with. And for my wife and I, the flavor that resonated with us, or what happened with us, is we just simply at that time had enough passive income coming in to cover our expenses. So the idea was solidified when my daughter was born, where, hey, this is a very big commitment. There's a very high pressure job with a hedge fund going on, and I really want to focus my efforts on my daughter and my family. So that's where that transition point happened for myself.
Okay.
Now, there's a difference, though. Like, for example, there could be a situation where somebody is working, they even have kids, or they don't, but they have a roadmap to reach that notion of financial independence over the next, like you said, with that particular client situation, over the next X amount of years. Just knowing that might be enough of a comfort to be able to shift gears or to change your perspective on things, to be able to make lateral moves that you may not make otherwise. So for some people, they want that understanding to have already occurred, meaning I already have enough now, and now I feel confident to take that leap. For some people, it might be, I have the plan, I'm not quite there, but I know if I follow these minimal things, which have a high degree of, or which I have a high degree of confidence in, of succeeding, then that's good enough. That's good enough for me to make these lateral moves. Now, for many people, if they're further out and there's enough uncertainty and they really need to hunker down, then it may not be as realistic.
Okay, here's the big scary one. And I say scary to you as a financial advisor, not scary to the clients, because it is possible, and you can imagine the way the math works, that two-income household, they're not particularly close to financial independence. They have been saving, but they go down to one income to have one stay-at-home parent, and part of their financial plan is when kids are out of the house, the other spouse needs to go back to work, and then they need to kind of save in the future.
Right.
There are a lot of risks involved with that. Income potential, the ability to save in the future, health, disability, lifestyle combination. Like, there are a lot of risks, and it is not a safe assumption that your future savings will be enough to provide financial independence. Most likely, you're gonna have to work longer. It's gonna, because you don't have the decades of compound growth, so you have to save more in the future than you would be saving now.
Yeah.
And so it's either working longer or restricting lifestyle more in the future. But that can work if having a stay-at-home parent is the priority over being financially independent as soon as possible. And this is the big scary thing, that yes, it's possible. We can make it work. There are risks, and you get to decide which risks you take on and what is the lifestyle that you want to live.
Yeah. It's this notion of, in an ideal world, we would like to indemnify ourselves against any bad thing that could ever happen, right? And there's only one certainty in life, right?
Yes.
Maybe two if you ask an accountant. But overall, you have to take some risk, right, somewhere. And that's why I like to think of financial planning as a process, not something where you do it once, you wipe your hands, and you come back a decade later and say, what happened? No, it's an iterative process, meaning you can look at that scenario, you can say, this is what we feel makes the most sense in, for our lives, for our situation. We understand the risks. There's a 30% chance roughly that we may need to abandon ship and shift gears, or go back, both of us go back to work and get a daycare, a nanny, or whatever it happens to be. But we're comfortable taking on those risks. These are informed decisions. And then as we're tracking year after year, we may realize that we're going to double down on this notion, or we need to make adjustments along the way. So it could certainly go in either direction, depending on how preferences change over time and how actual outcomes play out.
That's a great point, is that this is not a decision set in stone for the next decade. It's okay, you understand the risks. And I tell clients all the time, you get to decide which risks you take on.
Choose
which risks you can live with, which risks you can still sleep at night, and which risks you can't.
Yeah.
We can't get, like, I never use the word indemnify, but like, can't get rid of all the risks, but you get to decide which ones you take on.
Yeah.
Also, doesn't mean that you can't change your mind 2 years from now. Like, oh, this isn't working as well. I'd rather be able to go on more vacations and spend daycare. And sometimes, like, I've had new parents, like, I want to go talk to grownups. Like, so there are different reasons, different lifestyle decisions like that could change that mind, but you don't have to be so scared that you're going to live in a box on the street to not actually live the life you want.
Yeah.
And I think this is why I like this combination of thinking about parenting and financial independence, and they are not mutually exclusive, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, there's decisions that you get to make and priorities, and what are your values and what are your priorities, and that's what we can make happen. And a good financial planner will help you understand the risks, and like you said, monitoring along the way. Like, this changed, can we still continue down this path, or do we need to make an adjustment? That's a great, that iterative process. I like that. That was a really good example of working with a financial planner, taking on these really big risks.
Right. Good stuff, Aaron.
Those are good. Maybe next time I'll ask you what big risks you are taking on.
Sure.
So, but yeah, this is a good one. I want to keep talking about this idea, this like difference between financial independence and classic old-fashioned retirement.
Yeah. It's the title of our podcast. It's a spectrum, right?
Yeah. Yes. There we go. Yes. There we go. Yep. Exactly.
Financial independence is just one, little narrow slit on that whole spectrum of possibilities. So,
yeah. I like that.
Right.
Okay. Well, it's a good conversation. We'll do it again next time.
All right. Good stuff, Aaron. I enjoyed the conversation as well. If you're liking these episodes, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and comment. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye. We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical, as no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.